I'm Janine Deaver, and I'm a member here. It's my privilege to present our speaker. Marsha Haney grew up in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, but has been in Texas since attending Abilene Christian University. There she met and married her husband of 50 years, Neil. They have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. She has appeared on camera in corporate video and television commercials, as well as stage at the Temple Civic Theater. Most recently, she appeared there as Betsy in Marvin's Room. For 21 years, she was the co-host of Children's Miracle Network telecast, which raised funds for McLean's Children's Hospital. She is the owner of Marsha Haney Voice and Video, a production company that has produced videos for small corporations, cities, and nonprofits. Marsha teaches a Tuesday morning Bible class and is the media director for Western Hills Church of Christ in Temple. She has been a speaker for women's groups in Michigan, California, Indiana, Missouri, Texas, Arkansas, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. The experience of Temple Civic Theater inspired the one-woman portrayals of women in the Bible, which she has performed for the churches and women's retreats, as well as the community clubs and organizations. According to Neil, where there are 2 or 3 gathered together, Marsha will do a program. It has been my privilege to know Marsha and Neil. We worshiped and served the Lord together at Western Hills Church of Christ. I know we will all be blessed today by Marsha's talent and service to the Lord. Also, this group will have the unique honor of being the first group to see all 4 characters perform together. Our first character is Mrs. Noah, and she's remarkably real and unique and funny. Our scripture for her is Psalm 77:13 through 19. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is great like our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have made known your might among the peoples. You, with your arm, redeemed your people, the children of Jacob and Joseph. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. Indeed, the deep trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies gave forth thunder. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightnings lighted up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. Mrs. Noah, the Almighty will provide.
Where do I begin to tell you of the adventure that has been my life? Well, first of all, why don't I introduce myself? Now, you read about me in Holy Scripture, but you don't know my name. So since we're going to spend a little time together today, why don't you call me Golda? My adventure began when my life began with Noah. Now, I have to tell you, when I was a young girl, all the other girls in the village, they were being betrothed. Golda was not. Now, this was something that worried me a lot. I think it worried my mother and my father more than it did me. And so they were looking for a match for me. And they looked and they looked and they looked, but they could not find anybody, and I had no suggestions. And so I didn't quite know when or if that was ever going to happen. I thought, oh, I'm going to be the only old maid in the village. I'm going to walk down the street and people are going to say, oh, there goes poor Golda. She can't ever get married. Nobody wants her. But I forgot to remember something that I have always known, but that I do keep on forgetting. The Almighty will provide. And He did. One day my mother and my father came in. They were so excited. They said, Golda, we have made a match. And I said, oh, don't tell me. Let me guess. Is it Nathaniel? Now, Nathaniel would have been a pretty good catch. Fine-looking guy. No, it's not Nathaniel. Jared. Now, Jared wasn't quite so handsome as Nathaniel, but Jared had plenty of, shall we say, money? And so I thought that would be a good match. They said, no, it isn't Jared. And I said, oh, please don't let it be Tubal-Cain. I cannot go through my life being Mrs. Tubal-Cain. That would be as bad as walking down the street, people saying Mrs. Tubal-Cain, and it would be, oh, poor Golda. She never quite got there, bless her heart. And so I said, I have no more guesses. And they said, well, it's Noah. Noah? But he's so much older than I am. And he's got this little bald spot on top. And they said, but he's a wonderful man. I said, I can't deny that. He is. He's a wonderful man. Everyone in the whole village thought he was wonderful. And so the match was made. The wedding took place. It was quite lovely. And Noah and I went off to make our lives. Now I have to tell you, I know that you think that probably Noah was absolutely perfect. This is not so. I never have understood this. Maybe you have a problem kind of like this. So he's out and he's making things out of wood and he's sawing, and he was wonderful at that. And then he decides he needs to tell me something, and so he comes in, and when he comes in, he does all of this. Inside. And so I said, you know, I think maybe that would be something you could do out here. Why don't you do this out here instead of in here? And I think maybe after we'd been married 20 or 25 years, he caught on, and he did start doing this out here, but not in here. But all in all, he was a kind, tender-hearted, sweet, wonderful man. And the most wonderful thing about him was that he walked with God. He walked with the Almighty. And so I had to keep reminding myself of that thing, though, that I keep on forgetting, but that I've always known. And that is, the Almighty will provide. Because we didn't have any children. And that's a little upsetting. And I wanted children. Well, let me tell you about this particular day. This was the day that changed our lives forever. He comes in, and he did remember to do this out here and not in here. He comes in, he said, Golda, I need to talk with you. And I said, certainly, that's fine. And I was kind of fussing around and picking some things up and cleaning, and like we always do. And he said, I've been talking with the Almighty. And I said, good. He did that every day. But he says, I have something very important to tell you. That's all right. Well, Golda, I'm going to build an ark. And I said, that's wonderful, dear. What is an ark? He said, well, it's a boat. And I said, it's a boat? Yes. But there's no water anywhere around here. He said, well, believe me, when the time comes, there'll be plenty of water. I said, oh, no, okay, all right. He said, that boat is going to be 450 by 75 by 45. I said, that's a very, very big boat for 2 people. He said, well, we're going to take along our sons and their wives. When I thought that was very interesting, since we had no children at the time. He said, believe me, because the Almighty has said this is what will happen. And then he told me the reason we're building this enormous boat is because the Almighty is going to destroy the earth. Now, I know that you think that things are pretty awful right now here, but I have to tell you they're nothing as awful as they were in our day. Because you see, there was so much evil that the perception that I had was that everybody just thought evil all the time. And it was very hard to find anybody like my Noah. There just weren't other men like my Noah. And so that moment, I had to tell you that I really had to remind myself of that thing that I just keep forgetting, but that I've always known, and that is that the Almighty will provide. I had all kinds of questions, because you see, I had to know how everything was going to happen. I can't just let it happen. Most of the time, I think that it happens because I'll make it happen. This is not true. But a lot of us have that problem. And so, when Noah was 480 years old, he began building the ark. And then, just as the Almighty had promised, when my Noah was 500 years old, the boys started coming. Now I have to tell you, I'm much younger than Noah. I was only 400 at the time. But I have to tell you, I think it might have been a little easier if maybe we'd had the boys when we were a little younger. But they were wonderful boys. And so sweet and dear. I used to love to just stand there and watch Noah and my boys building this ark. He taught them everything they needed to know about that. That enormous 450 by 75 by 45. I couldn't imagine how that was ever going to happen. But you know, the Almighty will provide, and He did. It was a very difficult time, though. I don't think there's anything that's harder for a wife than to have to watch people make fun of your husband, make fun of your children. And that happened day in and day out. The people came and they laughed and they said, poor Noah. He's just not even got his mind anymore. He's building a boat. There's no water anywhere. But my Noah tried. He tried so hard. He tried so hard. He preached so hard to the people to tell them that the Almighty will provide. They need to believe in the Almighty. They need to live for the Almighty. But they paid absolutely no attention at all. 120 years. That's a long time. You know, there were moments in there when I thought, maybe this thing is not really going to happen, and then we're going to have to spend the rest of our lives with this huge 450 by 75 by 45 sitting out there and people making fun all the time. And oh, I had to remind myself of that thing that I just keep always forgetting, that the Almighty will provide. And so finally the day came. The day came when I thought, oh, I think I remember that we're supposed to take my sons and their wives. At this moment, we got no wives. And I thought to myself, where are we going to find girls that are good enough for my boys? As far as I knew, there could not possibly be anywhere on this earth a girl good enough for any of my boys. But for Shem, Ham, and Japheth, we found the most wonderful girls. You know, I could not have loved them more if they'd been my own flesh and blood, if they'd been my own daughters. And so here we were, my daughters, my sons, and my husband, all building the ark. And finally, after that 120 years, it was finished. And then, of course, I had to start worrying again because we still had no water. But my big concern was this. You see, when Noah told me about this ark, he said, we're not only going to take along our sons and their wives, and the two of us, but we are going to take along some animals. And we're going to take along all the food that we need. And I'm thinking, we're going to take along animals? He said, oh yes, we're going to take along 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean animals. And I thought to myself, first of all, how am I going to find these animals? How am I going to tell them that they got to go get on this ark? How am I going to get them on this ark? But then, you know, that thing, I had to remind myself of that thing that I've always known but kept on forgetting. The Almighty will provide. And so, we waited. I woke up this one morning and it was a beautiful morning, not a cloud in the sky. The sun was bright. I took a deep breath and I looked out on the horizon, and on the horizon I saw all these little something out there, all this bobbing up and down out there. And all this bobbing up and down out there started getting closer and closer and closer. And when I looked at all that bobbing, it was animals. The Almighty was sending them to us. And here they came, marching in, 2 by 2, just walked right up there, went right in the ark, like this is where we're gonna stay for a while. And the most amazing thing, there were lions, there were lambs, and the lions did not eat the lambs. And so, I remembered again, the Almighty will provide. And so, we loaded all the food. We loaded all the, well, the Almighty loaded all the animals. And then, the time came. Noah said, the Almighty has spoken, and so we must get on the ark. And so we did. And such a sound. I have never heard a sound like this before. I have never heard a sound since. We were there, and the Almighty shut the door. And we sat there, and we waited. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, and then I heard it. Drip, drop, drip, drop, and it started raining. It rained torrents. It rained and it rained and it rained and it rained. For 40 days and 40 nights, it rained. And there was the water. And I remembered what my Noah had said. Believe me, Golda, when the time comes, there'll be plenty of water. And then there was that moment. We're sitting there, and we're waiting. And then I felt it. I felt the ark being lifted up by the waters. And you know, that feeling, it was as though the Almighty was just lifting us up and holding us in His hands. And I felt safe. I felt safe in the arms of the Almighty. And the boat floated, and it floated. And I reminded myself of that thing that I have always known, but that I kept on forgetting. The Almighty will provide. And then came day after day after day after day, not knowing how long we were going to be on this 450 by 75 by 45. That sounds very large, but I have to tell you, after several months, it got smaller and smaller. And there was that first day that I decided that I needed to go feed the animals. Now, we had the animals on the lower deck, we had the food on the middle deck, and we were on the upper deck. And so I went down there, gathered up some food, but I have to tell you, when I walked in there, oh my, the smell was so awful. It burned my eyes, it burned my nose. I could not get out of there quickly enough, and that is when I made a decision. This is a job for the children. And so that became their job. And the days went by, and we felt ourselves rocking, rocking, rocking in the arms of the Almighty. And when the rain stopped, we weren't quite sure. No promise had been made about how long it was going to take for everything to dry up. And so, after a while, my Noah sent out a raven. Well, the raven couldn't find any place to sit down, so the raven came back, and we knew this is not the time. So we waited a while longer. And then he sent out a dove. Well, bless her heart. She couldn't find a place either. And so she came back. Waited a little while longer, sent her out again. This time, bless her heart. She came back, but she had a little olive branch in her beak. And so we knew it's beginning to dry up out there. Maybe it won't be long. There was a part of me that I wanted it to be over. I wanted to step out of the ark, but there was a part of me that was a little frightened because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was going to look like out there. I knew what it was like in here. I was safe in here. And I wasn't quite sure that I was going to be safe out there. Oh, don't you see how teeny tiny my faith is? And now, why I tell you, I just have to keep on reminding myself of that thing that I just keep always forgetting. The Almighty will provide. And so we send that little dove out again. And this time, she did not come back. And so we knew. We knew she found some place where she could nest. It was dry, and it was time. The Almighty opened the door. And we stepped out onto the most beautiful sight you can imagine. It was clean, it was clear, it was beautiful. And we could do nothing but fall to our knees and praise the Almighty for bringing us through. My Noah built an altar, and we made sacrifices. And then, just like the animals had marched on, they marched off. And I had to remind myself, oh my, Golda, you keep forgetting. The Almighty will provide. Praise Him, glorify Him. Other people don't come through sometimes, but the Almighty always does. And then, there in that moment, you will not believe the sight. All that vegetation glistening in the sunlight, and then suddenly there appeared in the sky this bow, this rainbow that went from one horizon to the other horizon, bright and beautiful colors. And that reminds us, all of us, all generations from our moment on, that the Almighty will never again destroy this earth by water. And so, when you look up in the sky and you see a bow in the sky, you remember Golda. And you remember this thing that I have always known but kept on forgetting. The Almighty will provide.